Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is one of the most controversial games in the series, and not just because it's flawed, but because of what it represents. After seeing the mixed reception to Secret of the Mimic, it got me thinking about the game that came before it, the one that actually got me into FNAF in the first place. So now, I'm revisiting the first FNAF game I ever played, which was Security Breach. When this game came out, it sparked a massive reaction in the community. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But I don't just think this game is flawed, I think there are deeper issues underneath. Issues that go just beyond bugs and bad design. After coming back to it years later, I think I finally understand what those issues are. I remember discovering this game when I was around 13 years old, and it ended up pulling me into the entire FNAF series. So in a weird way, this is where it all started for me. But coming back to it now, something feels off, and that's what I really want to talk about. Is Security Breach a bad game? And the short answer is it's complicated, and that's exactly why it's worth looking at. Now just to be clear, I'm not a FNAF hater. I still really like the earlier games for their atmosphere, their tension, and what they're trying to do. But Security Breach just doesn't quite hit those same notes. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't played the game yet. So without further ado, let's get into it. By this point, it's no secret that this game had trouble productions, but I'll just give a brief summary. Even though Steel Ball had a relatively small team, they possibly weren't working in unison because of the pandemic and having to work online rather than in person. Additionally, it was revealed that Scott donated money to one of the major political parties in June 2021, which then fueled a backlash that saw him step down as a lead creator, including rumors that he was allegedly stepping down from FNAF in general, which depending on who you ask, is ambiguous. This may explain why the final product felt rushed, or it wasn't playtested as much as it needed to be. So, as a result of all this, it's likely no wonder this game suffered from these setbacks. Before I play this game, I just want to give a few bits of criticism and praise that first come to mind. I've previously mentioned that I don't hate this game or the others, and I'll prove this by making a list of things I like about it. However, keep in mind that these positives aren't permanent, and I do come back to them to list out as negatives. The design of this game is very clearly a 1980s US consumerist utopia-inspired mall, with a retro-futuristic twist. The neon colors and lighting feel really immersive, the architecture is greatly reminiscent, the callbacks to pop culture are clever, the carpeting on the floors and the ball pit in the daycare are pretty accurate to the time, and it has this general vibe that you were transported back in time to a somewhat romanticized depiction with admittedly little to no references of everything that happened back then. However, if you're 40 or older, you'd probably feel that nostalgic late-stage Cold War attitude, along with hype for the technology of the future. The characters are mostly intriguing and have some established personalities, and you can tell that Steel Ball had fun creating these characters, as the animatronics definitely feel like 1980s US-inspired rock stars. Chica looks and feels like a Spice Girl, or maybe even Cyndi Lauper, if you will. Roxanne could be Poison or David Bowie with the big exaggerated hair, as well as her clothing resembling that of an 80s sexual advertisement model. Monty looks like a bass player. I'm sorry, Monty, I don't know who to compare you with. And I can't stop making a correlation between Freddy Fazbear and Freddie Mercury. The sci-fi elements are probably some of the best parts of the game. The massive screens on the walls, the projection of the glam rocks on the stage and the main concert area, and the giant animatronics make the facility have a touch of cyberpunk to it. Sort of like Cyberpunk 2077 or Blade Runner 2049. The animatronics, which have their own personalities and walk and talk like humans, are very sci-fi inspired. Sort of like GLaDOS from Portal, or the robot from the Murderbot Diaries series. Especially how massive the whole facility is, even from a child's perspective. The enormous size of everything is so atmospheric, it feels like a game that Valve would make. The voice acting of the characters is well done. Steel Ball did a good job casting the characters, and the actors deliver believable performances, giving them special personalities and dialogue, etc.
Shh! Will you shut up?
Who said that?
I did! And down here!
Down where? I still do not see you.
Welcome to exercise! Work off the calories while you eat! Sign up for a membership pass today! Super cool perks include discounts on pizza, nachos, fries.
Your performance was perfect tonight. Thank you. Your hair is beautiful. Your tail is beautiful. Everyone was watching you. Everyone loves you. Everyone wants to be you. You are the best.
I do also think the sound effects are well done, if you're ignoring a few conspicuous things, and they don't feel out of place. Although I will note that Gregory's voice sounds too much like Ash Ketchum from Pokemon.
I found the loading dock, but there's nothing here. There are some big garage doors, but I don't see a way to get out. I'm Ash from Pallet Town. I gotta catch them all!
What is emotional engineering, you might ask? Well, it simply refers to the technique in storytelling and game development where the devs use anything to get the audience emotionally invested. Think lighting techniques, color choices, character interactions, music, framing, etc. With that in mind, you can see where these techniques are prevalent. For several examples, the opening stage performance does a great job of exciting you, and the daycare section makes great use of suspense and terror. The Vanny ending can evoke sadness in the average player, and the endoskeleton section, which uses good character mechanics that resemble the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, use more of that terror and suspense.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead. They are fast, faster than you could believe. Don't turn your back. Don't look away, and don't blink.
The various areas around the Pizzaplex are huge and do a great job of hinting at story depth. The big rubbish and trash area reminds me of the Tartaros pit from Portal 2, an abandoned area of junk, debris, and overall stuff rotting in a pit. It's also creepy down there, especially when hearing random bits of Chica without her voice box. Additionally, the area after the underground parking lot with all the sticky notes and robots is also very cool. And from what I know, the table with all the robots has been theorized to be a crude representation of the Afton family, which is a nice touch. The Fastcade is huge, and the music playing while I'm running for my life from the Big Music Man animatronic is awesome. Rockstar Row is another area with such similar qualities. It's photos of the animatronics from FNAF 1 and 2, objects and display casings like in a museum, the giant statues of the glam rocks, the rooms exhibit the unique traits of the animatronics, and so on. The main area, which sort of acts as the hub of the Pizzaplex, is really big and insane. They put so much detail in this area that it's almost overkill. In fact, you can really say that about every area. Clearly, Steelbull enjoyed making this game, with all the hints and references coming across as a love letter to the FNAF franchise. Especially since taking the subversive approach of making an animatronic a good guy is very interesting, and an animatronic being helpful and sweet to the player is a bit of a refresher.
Way to go, Superstar! I knew you could do it.
Among other things like the security guard being an antagonist, even if she's lackluster. Alan Simpson definitely understood the assignment for the music. The songs in this game are greatly inspired by the 1980s. The opening score when you first hop into the game makes the player feel uneasy with its creepy music box quality. The main theme is a great piece of music, as it perfectly orchestrates the feeling of the 1980s. Plus, it serves as a great introduction to the new setting we're in. The DJ Music Man theme is definitely inspired by disco track music, as well as it being perfectly eerie enough to be played while being chased. The daycare theme music is good at making you feel like you're in a kid's play place, and it perfectly fits the tone of the area with the supposed lightheartedness of the animatronic in the play place. I do personally think the arcade theme song could have been just as solid a main theme, especially since it sort of matched what a song in a futuristic FNAF game would sound like. And there's so many other songs in this game that I can't quite get to all of them to explain why they're so good, so I'll just leave it with the ones I like the most. Next, I'll discuss some stuff that I personally have a problem with, and it's only stuff that surrounds the game universe itself. For the sake of simplicity, I've organized all my pre-game criticisms into 4 parts: narrative and character depth, game mechanics and logic, world building and lore, and logistics and level design. Gregory is an underdeveloped character because we know almost nothing about him, or at least nothing that actually matters, like where he's from, why he's here, or what's motivating him. I love the idea of a protagonist starting as a mystery, but Gregory barely feels like a character at all. There's very little dialogue or meaningful actions that reveal his personality, motives, or any real backstory. And Gregory isn't alone. Many of the other characters suffer from the same issue. Their personalities are mostly conveyed through voiceovers in their special areas, promotional material, or isolated dialogue. But we rarely see these personalities meaningfully interacting with Gregory, Freddy, or even each other. Before the animatronics become their shattered versions, and even after, their dialogue remains fairly flat. Editor Jude here. I forgot to mention that Roxanne is the only animatronic who's still able to talk, as she still has her voice box, unlike Chica, and Monty only screams and growls. And I may have over-exaggerated that her lines barely hint at depth, as many of her lines like,
I'm not a loser.
or
I am still beautiful.
do have some character weight to them. I just wanted to note that really quickly. Now back to the video. Even moments that hint at depth, like Roxanne crying her eyes out, Chica constantly eating garbage, or Monty wrecking the crap out of his room never develop beyond surface level.
How it feels to chew 5 gum. New 5 gum. Stimulate your senses.
These moments exist, but they're never explored or built upon. There are a few character-specific lines, like Vanessa holding Gregory in the office.
I'll bet you think you're real clever, Gregory. Yeah, I know your name. You're in big trouble. This is not the night to be wasting my time. So, you are going to wait right there in Lost and Found until your parents or the police arrive.
Her comments about 6 a.m.
Hey, little man. You know what time it is? The doors are open. Why are you still here? You plan on moving in, or you just want a job? Maybe join the internship program. You would make a great security guard. Gregory, I think you deserve a reward. Go check the main stage.
Or Roxy telling Freddy to leave her room.
Freddy, get out of my room!
But we never hear the animatronics meaningfully converse with each other or Vanessa. Vanessa claims she has already alerted the others at the beginning of the game, yet they never react dynamically to Gregory's actions, rarely acknowledge Freddy's abnormal behavior, and only noticeably change once they become their shattered versions. This is likely due to the mind control subplot affecting everyone except Freddy and Vanessa, which unfortunately reduces most characters to obstacles rather than fully fledged characters. And Freddy also doesn't feel fully fleshed out for several reasons I'll get into later, but even early on, his dialogue feels flat and overly instructional. Freddy often sounds less like a character and more like a corporate infographic or an instruction manual. Much of his dialogue feels like the game directly telling me what to do, rather than a character naturally guiding me through the section with any wit or personality. He also talks. A lot. A few other people have pointed this out.
Okay.
Look for me on the monitors. If you see me waving, push the button in front of the corresponding monitor to open.
This is so complicated. This man be giving me instructions for 45 minutes straight while somebody banging on the door. This man... Do you see the grate on the ground? Okay, rotate at a 45-degree angle and hit the light switch. Polygons. This dude just talking! Pythagorean's theorem with the quadratic equation. Security badge access. Just saying words now, dude!
And while it's not a massive issue, it does become slightly annoying over time. What's funny though, is that the simple one-liners from the other animatronics often deliver more character depth than Freddy's entire instruction cards. Listen.
Gregory, who wants candy? Your parents want you to follow me.
Nobody will miss you. I bet I'm your favorite. Give up. You can't win.
I know you're here. Let's rock. Hey, little guy.
Then compare that to this.
Those boxes on your minimap are nearby security cameras. When movement is detected by the camera's motion sensors, you should see red alert icons. Switch between the cameras to find a safe path out of the office and to the main lobby.
The only real hint of characterization is when he says these lines.
The doors were designed to keep our highly trained security staff safe in the event of an emergency. As long as the doors stay closed, which they will, as long as there is ample power. No, I did not. There is no rabbit at the Mega Pizzaplex. Not anymore. If we get separated again, you can always call me on your fast watch, as long as I have power, and I am able to reach you. I do not come up here anymore. I miss him. I know what this is. I have been here before. She brought me here. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I did not want to, but I had no choice. Now I have a choice. I have changed. My friends are here. They are so angry, confused. But I can protect you. I am not mean.
These moments are actually interesting because they suggest there's something deeper going on with Freddy, but they're far and few between and never fully explored. Especially that last line, but we'll get there when we do. Freddy could have also been far more fleshed out if he had been written more like an awkward sidekick, similar to this character.
This is the main breaker room. Let's go in. Look for a switch that says escape pod. Alright, don't touch anything else. Not interested in anything else. Don't touch anything else. Don't even look at anything else. Just, well, obviously you've got to look at everything else to find the escape pod. But as soon as you look at something and it doesn't say escape pod, well, look at something else. Look at the next thing, alright? But don't touch anything else or look at anything. Well, look at other things, but don't. You understand? Can you see it anywhere? I can't see it anywhere. Tell you what, plug me in and I'll turn the lights on. Let there be light. That's, God. Just quoting God. Oh, look at that. It's turning. Ominous. But probably fine, as long as it doesn't start, moving up. Now. Escape pod, escape pod. It's moving up. Okay. Okay, no, don't worry, don't worry. I've got it. This should slow it down. No, makes it go faster. Uh-oh.
That type of personality would have made Freddy significantly more likable, memorable, and just fun to listen to. Vanessa also mostly functions as a pursuer, similar to the animatronics, which limits her depth as well. She's shown to have authority, she can boss around the animatronics, but she never uses that authority in interesting ways. For example, why doesn't she coordinate traps, block exits, or actively strategize instead of having everyone wander aimlessly around the Pizzaplex? It's also telling that much of the more human and relatable characterization comes from fan-made content rather than the game itself, which ironically feels like a missed opportunity for the developers. Additionally, in most endings, there's little to no information about what happens to Roxy, Monty, or Chica, where they are, how they feel, or what becomes of them. Whether intentional or not, this makes them feel irrelevant, despite being the characters featured on the main poster and throughout the promotional material. And that ultimately makes the cast feel less like characters and more like set dressing, which feels like a huge missed opportunity. The most interesting parts about the animatronics are undoubtedly their inner morals, personalities, etc., but they do pose some serious questions for Fazbear Entertainment. This is particularly noticeable with Roxy, Monty, Chica, and Moon. Fazbear Entertainment clearly aims to create lifelike animatronics for guest experiences, but the personalities often seem counterproductive to their bottom line. And God forbid a corporation have their stock drop by a small percentage or spend extreme amounts on anything that hurts their bottom line. Roxy presents a confident, tough girl persona, yet she's shown hyping herself up and even crying, which obviously suggests deep insecurity. Does it raise the question of why Fazbear would intentionally program an animatronic with visible emotional instability? Yes. Wouldn't it make more sense to keep stage personalities limited to performances with more neutral programming after hours? Also yes. Although now that I think about it, because our main area is closed off from the public as a whole, it may explain why she's feeling insecure, as she may fear that she'll be a character without a dedicated section to her. Freddy doesn't really have a dedicated area either, and his personality appears stable. That could suggest two possibilities. Either Freddy wasn't affected by whatever altered the other animatronics, or his stability comes from being the main mascot, effectively making the entire Pizzaplex his attraction. But if any of you might know what's going on, please let me know in the comments.
However,
Monty presents an even larger issue that I have with Fazbear Entertainment. Through various notes and environmental storytelling, he's portrayed as angry, aggressive, destructive, and even envious. He's also shown as a liability to guests, employees, and the other animatronics, and he's implied to be jealous of Freddy and possibly responsible for Bonnie's destruction, according to game lore. So why would Fazbear Entertainment approve this personality in the first place? If Monty is such a risk, why hasn't he been reprogrammed or decommissioned by the time Fazbear Entertainment started getting more frequent maintenance bills from the property destroyed by Monty? Additionally, even if he has a large enough fanbase preventing his decommissioning, simply toning down his aggression would solve most of these problems. Similarly, the same applies to Roxy. Chica is a strange character because there's really no depth to her personality beyond being a foodie, and even then, that trait raises some logical issues.
I got it! Yes, bitches! Chocolate vanilla swirl with cookie crunch, please!
Fazbear Entertainment allows her to eat garbage throughout the game, which makes me question how this behavior would be permitted at all, especially since, unlike Roxy or Monty, whose personalities create behavioral risks, Chica's personality creates practical and mechanical problems, which makes her personality design just as questionable from a company standpoint. Surely eating regular food, especially from the trash, would cause grime to build up or potentially damage her internal mechanisms. That would likely lead to more frequent maintenance, cleaning, and repairs, which would be both costly and inconvenient for the company. So why hasn't Fazbear Entertainment added some sort of module or restriction that prevents her from eating food? It's possible her eating was originally intended as some sort of marketing gimmick, but even then, it's hard to believe that Fazbear wouldn't have control over that behavior, especially considering the advanced AI and programming these animatronics already possess. If they can create sentient personalities, they should also be able to prevent an animatronic from digging through garbage. Lastly, the Moon animatronic raises even more concerns. He's explicitly portrayed as frightening and harmful, with kids shown to be afraid of him, including the Sun animatronic. If parents are filing complaints and kids don't want to return to the daycare, why would Fazbear continue to let this character be in the daycare section? From a business and safety perspective, keeping Moon active seems counterintuitive, especially for a company likely already prone to lawsuits. Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine, but it's still worth discussing. Fazbear Entertainment is portrayed as a charmingly corrupt, evil company similar to, say, Aperture Science or Black Mesa, but the setup doesn't convincingly support that comparison. By the time Security Breach takes place, Fazbear Entertainment's reputation should realistically be destroyed, especially with modern regulations. Even if they could cover things up in the 80s, stricter laws after 2000 make it hard to believe a company like this could still operate in the 2020s or 2040s as implied. The announcement at the start of the game highlights how absurd this feels.
Please make your way to the front of the building, where you will be given novelty glasses, a voucher for 1 free soda refill, and where you will sign a legal disclaimer releasing us of all liability for anything that might have happened during your visit.
This line suggests that a supposedly family-friendly entertainment company casually asks guests to sign liability waivers after their visit, but this particular type of humor undermines the company's believability. If Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex is so successful and heavily promoted, it's hard to believe they could avoid severe backlash and legal trouble. Other fictional companies balance this better, so why not Fazbear Entertainment? The real arguments of why Fazbear Entertainment could have survived this long could be because of them using corporate gaslighting or lobbying in the town. But this won't really hold up, because if Security Breach is set between the 2020s and 2040s, then do any of the devices that we use in the modern day exist in this universe? Like the internet, smartphones with cameras, or social media apps with a stranglehold over our pop culture / political / personal lives? By the time the internet had came around, companies needed to seriously step up their game when it came to public relations. If one single video recorded by anyone showed something shocking, or that would ruin a company's public image, and it went viral to the point of global coverage, that company would be in hot water very quickly. So why is it that anything going on with the Mega Pizzaplex hasn't been widely shared on this universe's equivalent of the internet? Again, you could make a counter-argument in that they have the power to discredit anyone's theories because the lore is apparently not real, even in-universe, as stated in FNAF Help Wanted, where the lore of the original games was created by some crazy game developer Fazbear Entertainment hired, leaving it with a more meta argument.
We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic, lawsuits pending. But we aren't above laughing at ourselves. Ha ha ha. That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game, in the hopes that we can finally move past these childish ghost stories and develop a new relationship with you, as well as your kids. Don't forget the merch, perfect for birthdays. So sit back and enjoy a few scares.
But this doesn't work for reasons I'll explain. For me, because of FNAF Help Wanted's sarcastic attitude towards the lore and them claiming it was by a crazy game developer, it sort of makes the Help Wanted justification feel dubious because it further muddies the story of what's real and what's not for a game series with an already muddy timeline and story. And also, the style of humor does work as it has been employed in many other FNAF games, but Steelwool employing that style of humor for something as seen in FNAF Help Wanted does still cheapen the mystery. And yes, FNAF has always used tongue-in-cheek humor, but my issue isn't that the series jokes around, it's that FNAF Help Wanted applies that same attitude to information players were expected to take seriously. Anyway, that's why I don't trust Help Wanted as an explanation for why Fazbear Entertainment is getting away with all this stupid chicanery. Moving on. Why did Fazbear Entertainment leave the lights on all night? That alone would be incredibly expensive for the company, and it also feels like a missed opportunity. A fully dark pizzaplex lit only by exit signs, emergency lights, and flashlight recharge stations could have created a much scarier atmosphere. The cameras could have night vision, and the animatronics could as well. Saying it out loud, that sounds like a much more compelling way to adapt FNAF into a free-roaming game. The animatronics being sentient also raises some surprisingly deep questions. If their AIs are truly sentient, are they essentially humans trapped in metal bodies? Are they effectively slaves to the company? And what does this say about identity if artificial personalities can perfectly replicate human behavior, even in a more sanitized version?
I have never been allowed in here before. This must be where I was born. Look at all the endos. They're all the same. Have I always been a Freddy? Am I Monty with a different shell? What if I am not the first Glamrock Freddy? Are there more of me at other pizzerias? Do we all feel the same? Am I special? If I am mass-produced, am I still art?
Games like Heart of the Machine explore these ideas directly, as that game's premise was about being the first AI human. But Security Breach largely ignores those ideas.
I didn't know Roxy could see through walls.
These are round-sized.
The game heavily implies sentience, especially when Gregory damages the animatronics and deforms their endoskeletons, yet never meaningfully explores the ethical implications. Which, honestly, makes some of Gregory's actions feel a little harsh. They might need some serious robot therapy after that.
So how does that make you feel?
Why don't the animatronics besides Freddy get repaired? If Gregory can repair Freddy, then why doesn't Vanessa simply take Monty, Roxy, and Chica to parts and service too?
Monty will run the shows until parts and service can slap your casing on a new endo.
This line suggests the animatronics can receive replacement endoskeletons, which then implies other parts could also be replaced. That means Roxy could get new eyes, Monty could get new claws, and Chica could get a new voice box, and they'd be back to normal. Additionally, if Vanessa can already command the animatronics, it's reasonable to assume she could also direct repaired versions to continue searching for Gregory. Instead, the damaged animatronics remain broken for the rest of the game, which feels inconsistent with the world's logic. Another issue for me is where Security Breach actually fits within FNAF's overall tone. Earlier games primarily operated on supernatural horror, with occasional sci-fi concepts like FNAF 2's facial scanners or Sister Location's Scooper. These technologies existed, but they generally supported the central premise of haunted animatronics rather than replacing it. Security Breach pushes much further into science fiction, introducing advanced AI, mind control, and highly sophisticated robotics. On their own, these concepts are interesting, but the game never clearly establishes how they coexist with the series' supernatural elements. This uncertainty isn't entirely new. Sister Location often blurred the line between science fiction and the paranormal, making it difficult to determine whether certain events were driven by technology, possession, or both. Security Breach continues this trend, but on a much larger scale. Freddy, for example, references both programming and angry souls, suggesting that advanced AI and supernatural forces are simultaneously responsible for the animatronics' behavior. The problem isn't that the series contains both sci-fi and supernatural elements, it's that the game rarely defines where one ends and the other begins. As a result, the rules of the world become harder to understand, making the lore feel less cohesive than in earlier entries. Afton's mind control abilities also raise several questions. If he could control the other animatronics and Vanny, why didn't he control Freddy earlier? And if fire can disrupt his control during the boss fight, why doesn't it affect the other animatronics as well? Freddy also mentions this.
I will notify the main office. Connection error. I cannot connect to the main network.
Which suggests the existence of a central network. But if that's the case, why can't the system detect Freddy's disconnection? And how come it can't detect the intrusion into the other animatronics? If the Pizzaplex security system can detect intrusions into offices, it should logically be capable of detecting intrusions into the animatronics' AIs as well. Yet this never happens. No alarms, no countermeasures, and no indication that anyone is even aware of what's happening. Because of this, the hacking subplot feels underdeveloped and somewhat lackluster. The game introduces the idea of a connected system and large-scale manipulation, but it never explores the logical consequences of those concepts. If the animatronics were better mechanically structured, Security Breach would likely be far less frustrating, especially considering how frequently the player is forced to avoid them. Jacksepticeye pointed out that it would have been more effective if Gregory primarily encountered each animatronic within their own designated areas. This would allow players to gradually learn each character's behavior and mechanics in a controlled, readable way.
And the amount of times that characters just teleport instead of just wandering in an area. I feel like if the game wasn't as open as it is and you just went through different areas linearly, but each area had a different animatronic that was like a big deal. Like you start off the game at Freddy's thing and you use him and you go through certain sections and he has certain abilities that you can use. And then you go through the Gator golf thing first or something like that. And then it's like a linear path through it. And then when you're done with that, Gator's dead. You get his you get his upgrade. That upgrade brings you into the next area, and that thing is like really useful against another character.
I agree with this criticism, particularly because instead of feeling like intelligent pursuers operating with a believable system, they come across as artificially placed obstacles designed purely to slow the player down. This not only weakens the game's internal logic, but also contributes directly to one of Security Breach's core frustrations. Encounters often feel unpredictable in a way that's unfair rather than tense. When players can't reliably understand where enemies are coming from or why they're appearing, the challenge stops feeling skill-based and starts feeling arbitrary, which ultimately undermines both the gameplay and the horror. The game also suggests that Gregory can somehow control Freddy, yet this concept is never clearly explained or meaningfully expanded upon. While Gregory can't enter Freddy's stomach hatch, there's no visible method of actually controlling him from inside, and the idea is rarely revisited in a meaningful way. As a result, it becomes another confusing mechanic that raises more questions than it answers. Additionally, Freddy is capable of escorting Gregory into restricted areas, yet he's unable to perform simple interactions like buttons or activating elevators. Instead, Freddy's interactions are strangely limited. He can use recharge stations and occasionally break fences, but nothing else. This makes Freddy feel inconsistently useful. He's helpful for movement and protection, yet oddly restricted when basic interactions are required. Rather than feeling like a fully functional companion, Freddy often feels selectively limited for the sake of gameplay convenience. These inconsistencies weaken the mechanical logic of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. When a character is capable of complex actions like navigating restricted zones, but unable to perform simple tasks like pressing a button, the limitations feel artificial rather than beneficial, which ultimately pulls players out of the experience. When entering security offices in the East Arcade or backstage, only Roxanne and Monty respond, but for some reason, not Chica. If the alert is meant to notify nearby animatronics, this raises several questions. In the East Arcade, Roxanne's presence makes sense given her association with the area, but Monty's sudden arrival feels unexplained. Likewise, near the backstage area, Monty can be heard nearby, yet there's no clear indication that Roxanne is close enough to respond. These inconsistencies make the alert system feel less like a believable gameplay mechanic and more like a scripted encounter. Instead of reacting dynamically based on proximity or AI behavior, the animatronics appear to respond selectively depending on what the game needs at that moment. This weakens the sense that the animatronics operate within a consistent system. When alerts only trigger certain characters without clear logic, it becomes harder for players to predict outcomes or develop strategies. Rather than building tension through understandable mechanics, the game relies on seemingly arbitrary enemy placement, which ultimately contributes to frustration rather than suspense. The in-game clock is also inconsistent. While the story progresses through specific time jumps, such as advancing from 12 AM to 1 AM, the amount of gameplay between these moments doesn't always logically match the passage of time. To be clear, the game doesn't need to run in real time. However, the timeline should still feel internally consistent. Some segments involve extensive exploration, multiple objectives, and long traversal sequences, yet only a single hour passes. In contrast, other moments feel comparatively brief, but still result in a similar time jump. This creates a disconnect between gameplay and narrative time. While players spend what feels like a significant portion of the night completing tasks, only for the clock to advance in ways that doesn't match that effort, the timeline begins to feel artificial rather than believable. These inconsistencies further weaken the sense of structure in the game, since the entire premise revolves around surviving until morning, but the passage of time should feel deliberate and meaningful. When it doesn't, the night loses some sense of its tension, and the progression feels less grounded within the game's world. Freddy explains that every hour, power is diverted to recharge stations, causing the lights to go out and allowing Moon to roam the building.
Every hour the power is diverted to the recharge stations. When that happens, the lights go out. And when that happens, the daycare attendant is free to roam the building.
However, this mechanic is applied inconsistently. The lights often remain visibly on, yet Moon still appears. If Moon is meant to be triggered by darkness, then these moments contradict the rule the game itself establishes. This inconsistency is especially noticeable in parts and service, where Moon remains active despite the lights clearly being on. Then, at 6 AM, when the lights fully activate, Moon suddenly disappears. If Moon's behavior is tied to lighting conditions, these transitions should feel consistent and predictable. Instead, they feel arbitrary. Additionally, the idea of diverting power across the entire facility raises further questions. If recharge stations require such large portions of the building to lose power, this introduces a major safety and security risk. In a massive entertainment complex filled with guests, emergency lighting and critical systems would almost certainly be isolated from non-essential power usage. A more logical solution would be dedicated power storage, such as battery systems or a separate grid specifically for recharge stations. This would prevent widespread outages while still allowing Freddy to recharge when necessary. The absence of such a system makes the power mechanics feel poorly thought out, especially for a facility of this scale. The decision to make save points physical objects within the world is also difficult to justify. Save systems are typically meant to be intuitive for the player, not something that exists as a literal concept within the game's universe. Most games either use autosaving or integrate checkpoints in ways that feel natural to the environment. For example, Tom Clancy's The Division 2 places save functionality within towns, outposts, and safe rooms scattered throughout Washington, D.C. These locations serve gameplay purposes like saving or resupplying, but they blend seamlessly into the world because they function as believable hideout rather than obvious game mechanics. In contrast, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach presents save stations as literal consoles placed throughout the building. Not only does this make the mechanic feel artificial, but it also raises uncomfortable questions about the game's internal logic. If these machines exist within the world, does that imply the characters themselves are aware of saving? If so, why is this never acknowledged or explained? Beyond the conceptual issues, the placement of these save stations is also questionable. Many are positioned in open areas where security bots or hostile animatronics can easily spot Gregory. Making saving feel unnecessarily risky. While some placements are more reasonable, others feel poorly considered and inconsistent. This creates two problems at once. The save system feels both mechanically frustrating and logically out of place. Instead of blending naturally into the environment, the save stations stand out as artificial gameplay devices, further contributing to the broader issue of inconsistent world design and immersion. The sheer number of security patrol drones in the Pizzaplex is both excessive and confusing, especially from Fazbear Entertainment's perspective. Nearly every area is filled with security bots, which significantly shifts Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach away from its traditional design. Instead of focusing on cameras and strategic observation, which is a core element of the Five Nights at Freddy's formula, the game instead becomes heavily reliant on stealth and avoidance. This shift isn't inherently bad, but the execution raises several logistical and gameplay concerns. The constant presence of security bots forces players to spend more time navigating around patrols rather than engaging with the surveillance systems. As a result, the cameras, which should feel central to a FNAF experience, often become secondary tools rather than primary mechanics. Beyond gameplay concerns, the logistics within the game world are also questionable. The Pizzaplex appears to contain dozens, if not hundreds, of these roaming security bots. Manufacturing, maintaining, and coordinating that many heavy-duty machines would likely be extremely expensive, especially for a company that's historically portrayed as cutting corners and making questionable financial decisions. This creates a disconnect between Fazbear Entertainment's established characterization and the infrastructure shown in the game. A more logical solution might have been a surveillance-heavy approach. Instead of deploying large numbers of physical security bots, Fazbear Entertainment could have installed an extensive camera network covering most open areas, almost like a Truman Show-style surveillance system. This would have reinforced the importance of cameras while also creating more strategic stealth gameplay. This approach could have made open areas function as high-risk red zone, where Gregory would need to rely heavily on Freddy or navigate through hidden routes to avoid being detected. In turn, this would elevate both the camera system and Freddy's role from optional tools to essential survival mechanics. Alternatively, If Steelwool wanted a more sci-fi approach, smaller flying drones would have been used instead. These would feel more believable as surveillance devices, require fewer resources, and allow for more dynamic stealth encounters without cluttering the environment. Ultimately, the overuse of ground-based security bots creates both gameplay and world-building issues. Instead of reinforcing the franchise's emphasis on surveillance and tension, the system often feels intrusive, overly abundant, and mechanically unfocused. Chari5 already talked about this in his video, Everything Wrong with Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach in almost 35 minutes, where he mentions how Freddy can't get into certain areas because of the doors not opening all the way, but screw it, I'll talk about it too. Chari mentions how it's very dumb that the entire reason why Freddy is not very helpful in those areas is that he can't do special movements like crawling, and I agree. However, I think there is a reason for this, but don't quote me on it because it's only speculation. If you note how Freddy hides Gregory in his stomach, and the bots don't care about Freddy out in the open or Gregory inside Freddy, Steel will probably realize that Freddy's mechanics broke many other mechanics in the game. So to save on time and programming, they did a simple fix that made it so the doors can't open all the way. However, this can't work because it is too petty to have the doors open to about half the height of Freddy and then make it impossible for him to get into that area only because he can't crawl. Not to mention how the door thing is only used on very few doors. It was probably the result of poor program planning in the development stages, and while the fix is effective, it simply creates more problems. But again, it is just speculation. Hey folks, before I go, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Be sure to keep an eye out for episode 2, where we finally get into the gameplay. If you're at all disappointed that we didn't cover it in this episode, I do totally get it. I wanted to use this part to get all the story, presentation, and general arguments that had been bouncing around in my head out of the way first, since they didn't really fit into the gameplay discussion. If you have anything you'd like to add, please let me know in the comments. I'd especially love to hear what you agreed with, disagreed with, and thought I missed. I'm always interested in hearing different perspectives, and there's a good chance your feedback will help shape future videos. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in episode 2.